Greetings everyone, welcome back to my sketchbook. I feel like I've been seeing ducks everywhere, and I managed to see this, which kind of made me laugh. This is a little golden book that, features Donald Duck, and this one is actually from 1978, which is kind of neat. And even here in the background, it's a little duck as well, which I think is kind of cool. This is a weird little book because in some ways it's not really predicting a future, but kind of is. So there's a robot butler, and I'm not going to read this to you, but some of the things that it features in here with an automatic house is a personal bowling alley or a 68-inch TV set, a lawnmower. I mean, like, it has all these automatic features, preparing food and dishwashers and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I think that's kind of funny. What a neat little book that is. I'm kind of on a rubber duck kind of tour right now in my brain, and I thought it might be kind of fun to spend a little bit more time on drawing a rubber duck. Now, I'm not really going to use any of this stuff as a reference, although it's around me. I think what I'm going to do is just draw something and then maybe focus in on it a little bit. I still kind of like this little guy here for some reason. There's a, I don't know, it's got a weird look on its face too. Ducks are kind of cool. All right, well, let's see what we can do. And I'll dip the pen one more time because I don't remember if I did or not. Now, I don't know if I want the face looking this way or that way. And I don't know how long I'm going to be on this little phase, but that's kind of what the sketchbook thing is all about. Let's see. Looking this way, let's say. I'm going to start off with the bill. And I'm just going to, in my head, maybe figure out what I want it to look like. Now, I've done in one of the last few videos, I guess, a duck that's sort of turned maybe this way, and but we'll see. In my head, one of the things I'm using is like a baseball hat. But not really. How do I want this to be under here? I had a funny thought about perhaps them having teeth. Is that a funny thing? I know that it already exists out there, but let's try that anyway. Of course, ducks shouldn't have teeth. Let's focus in on that just a little bit without shaking the camera too much. Okay. Now, the eyes I'm going to bring forward just a little bit, and I'm not going to do the same eyes as what's around me. I think what I'm going to do, sunglasses would be kind of neat. Maybe, maybe not. Nah. I might add them in after. In a way, I was thinking a little bit of Scrooge McDuck. The relationship between Donald and his nephews is funny to me. I remember a cartoon quite some time ago where I think they were having a snowball fight. And that to me is one of the funniest things because it got really serious after a while. Like they were dipping basically missiles, is what they were doing. But anyway, so they'd make a. I don't know if it was the nephews that did it. I feel like it might have been. Snow, like they were having a snowball fight, and they had built like forts and stuff like that too. And anyway, they made missiles out of snow and dipped them in water so that they would freeze. Maybe it was Donald that did that. And they'd flick the sides, and it would, make a ting as if it was made of metal. And they were like, anyway, it was wild. So I think because I've been thinking a little bit about Donald, this is looking a little like Donald, but not really. No, it's looking a little bit more like Donald than I wanted it to, I think. I don't even really have the book in front of me. I set it aside. That's okay. Because I saw him. That's what's happening. Now, by the way, it's perfectly fine to use references. I do like to sometimes research a few things. Now, I'm going to dip the pen, and I'm going to focus a little bit on how I want the eyes to be. So let's go with the iris like this. Now, I did say something about teeth too, which is an unnatural thing for ducks to have. And I'm not going to give them the Donald sailor hat. I was thinking even like a baseball hat, because that's ridiculous. But I think Huey, Dewey, and Louie wear those. I'll figure that out after. Let's go with the pupil. We'll do a little reflection bubble up here like that. Maybe kind of one in here. Looks like a bunch of pupils. All right, so let's kind of fix that a little bit. Now, doodling, I suppose, in some ways is a little bit different than just sketching. I think a doodle, much like line art, it's kind of a simple thing where you don't really go too extreme. Although I think doodles, you can spend hours on doodling. So I don't know if there's a nice way to say that a doodle can't be too complicated. So yeah, I don't know. Because I've sat down more than twice and just doodled. And you can fill up an entire page with a doodle. Yeah, no, I don't think there's a real breakdown of how much time you should spend on something and then qualify it as a doodle after the fact. I mean, I'm already 10 minutes in, 11 minutes in. Now, there is something about this duck I don't really like very much right now. That happens too. I'm going to go back and finish the eyes just a little bit. Little tiny lines for the iris. Have a few more leading towards the center. So this might be like a doodle that's going a little further than some doodles might go. Dip the pen. Every so often, and in a way this is sort of tough to admit, I take for granted some of the people in my life. And I don't really do that purposely. It's more to do with you just get busy sometimes. And you kind of think, like, there's so much that's limited on this planet, especially the good stuff. And it's not always easy for everybody because you're busy with work or you're just busy and you kind of miss out on the important people in your life because you get busy with things. Stuff that isn't or shouldn't be that important. And yeah, you don't get that time back working on ridiculous things. So that's something I have to focus on doing better with. I have family all over the place that I don't really communicate with as often as I should. I have friends that I haven't seen in quite some time. Even friends that I live in the same city with, and I don't see them that often. You just get busy with some of it. It's just nonsense. Like, I don't really watch as much TV, and I try not to, weirdly enough. Mainly because I feel like TV kind of steals from me sometimes. My time, which is probably one of the rarest things on the planet. More rare than gold or, that. Is it some sort of designer, illustrator, Pokemon card? And I think it's interesting how you might look back over your life and be like, oh, am I ever glad that I got this stuff? But I wonder. I wonder if some people look back and just go like, I can't believe I devoted so much time to that. I don't know, it's weird. Again, I don't know what I think of this duck. This may not be my favorite thing ever. I haven't decided on a hat with it yet. So yeah, should there be a hat? What if... I mean, we already have teeth. Which is unnecessary for the duck to have. We have sort of frantic looking eyes. Let's add just a little bit of kind of like duck eyelashes. It's a conundrum to me at the moment. What if we just kind of simplify things, I suppose, and let's have the hair, or I should say the feathers, kind of just float back. I'll darken those in a moment. It saves us from figuring out what kind of hat, which is unnecessary for a duck with teeth. It just so happens that I know a bunch of artists who are tremendously skilled, and they influence me to do different things and give it a try and that kind of stuff. So I'm very grateful for people that inspire. So, like, let's see here. A walker. It's pretty cool that every so often I get to see your work, because it's it's a super inspiration. As you can see, I don't really do much in the way of like cross hatching. I kind of scratch in shadows, and it's if you're fortunate enough to have that skill set to cross hatch. I mean, I do a little bit, but not really. I've always liked the look of it because it reminds me of sort of like print work. So if you're doing something for a printing press, and sometimes you have limited colors, or sometimes you have to be able to think that it's like a dot matrix, or, well, how that image gets repeated, almost like a screen press. Cross hatching really comes across very well with that. And Walker is tremendous at that. So I like to be inspired. Well, that is a mallard face. We're at 24 minutes. And I don't know what else I should do with that. I guess if I want to waste a little bit of time, although it's not a waste of time, I can think of how parts of the body would be if it was a rubber duck. Although that doesn't look like rubber duck, feather stuff. So let's, did I already dip the pen? Let's try to figure out some of the body. Not much of a neck. He's going to put in there a little bit like that. That. Now we won't go too far with that. We'll give just a little bit of the shape of it. And a little bit over here. I don't want it to look too much like a chicken. As related as they are as birds. I remember carving a decoy, a duck decoy, for someone. And that was quite some time ago. And at some point that person passed away. And I guess whatever they had would have gone into an estate sale or, I don't know, dispersed amongst family or what have you. And sometime down the road, I went to an art crafts fair and I saw that duck decoy sitting on a table. And I knew it immediately because I'd spent hours and hours working on it. And the person selling it had this beautiful story of this old gentleman. And mind you, I should say this is 20, maybe close to 25 years ago. Anyway, of this old gentleman whose hands were failing, who no longer carved decoys. And I saw that it was for sale for like $2,400 or something like that. Or anyway, so it was funny to me that there was a whole story behind this. And I walked up to the vendor and I said, "Oh, that's really neat that you have this." And I wasn't really mad. I just thought the story that went along with it was a little bit odd. And I said, "I'm the one who carved this." And I picked up the duck and I turned it towards him and I said, "This name," because I carved the person's name in it as well, and it had my name on it. And I said, "I'm the person who did this. But that story is pretty good. I hope you sell it for what you're asking for." And he just looked at me and he's like, "Oh, well, that's the story that I was told." And I'm like, "Well, keep that story, I guess." And I just kind of walked away. I wonder where that duck is now. And I wonder if they kept the name on there. That was such a funny experience, though. Sometimes you see the value in what you do, and other times you don't really notice because you do it for other people or whatnot, and they're happy to have that thing. And I know in past videos I talked about, well, you should write letters and send them in the mail, and but like I think people appreciate that kind of thing. I think effort is worth a lot more, I guess. Anyway, I don't know what the point of that story is beyond feeling kind of funny about that whole situation. Yeah, that made me laugh though. Yeah, this whole awesome story. And I was a younger person then. And maybe my hands are failing me now. But I wasn't offended. That was the funny part, I guess, of the whole story. It was more just like a shock. Well, I don't think there's anything else that I want to do with this rubber duck thing for now. Were I so crafty, I suppose, I could actually, let's see if I can bring this out a little bit. Let's try what that looks like there. Now that we're further along. Get some more ink on that. Not real cross-hatching, by the way. A slight wake going around that. like that. Now let's see if we can ruin it very quickly, and then that way we've kept it under 25. What am I saying? Under 25, under 45 minutes. I am going to add the shading for our waterfowl with water, because that's how I do stuff. Ooh, that's ugly. I'll get back in there after. Now in school, there were different people that drew, and they were tremendously talented. I remember Sherry, one of my classmates, actually had designed some clothing and stuff like that, and actually wore it. And how amazing is that? There are people out there that just have this sort of talent for making something like that, practical and artsy. And that's so cool, because there are people out there that just kind of do that kind of thing. I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. A little bit inside here for the gum line. A little bit around here. So we're going to do a little bit in the eye. I mean, I do have smaller detailing brushes. And I don't know if I've exhausted the little duckies yet. Maybe I have. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening to me ramble. I do appreciate that. Final little bit here where the duck's body meets the water. Just a little bit. where only we know. All right, that's silly enough, I think. And up here, I will say, I'll go back over that spot, go back over that spot. Now you have to imagine with the correct pen, you don't have to do quite this much. When you're pulling the pen down, that's traditionally, if you have the right pen, this isn't it. That's weird that I did that. Anyway, so yes, when you pull the pen down, that's when the width would naturally show up. And not on the upstroke. So like there, there, there. If you're coming back down, it would be a little wider. Anyway, as I said, we'll be under 20, 45. Be under 45 with that silly duck. And yeah, well, I don't need to spend that much more time on that. So, look, folks, thanks for hanging out, as I said. And hopefully we'd see you at some point in the near future. All right, ciao for now.